Hello again. Today we will summarize lesson number 5, Miracles Around the Lake. There are so many stories that happen around the lake where Jesus performed miracles that bring hope to my life, and I know it will bring hope to your life. The main text for today was found in Mark chapter 5 verses 19, and this is what it says. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you." What a beautiful verse. On Sunday, we read Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. And this is the story of Jesus being on the boat with his disciples, and they go to the Sea of Galilee. Jesus is exhausted, and so he goes to the back of the ship, and he falls asleep. The story actually tells us that he fell asleep and he had a pillow under his head, when suddenly a storm breaks loose. Remember, the disciples are seamen. They're fishermen with experience. They grew up by the sea. They know all the tricks of the trade. But somehow this storm is wild, and they start panicking. The water's coming in, and they try to solve the problem on their own. They were confident that being fishermen with experience, with many years of experience, they could handle the storm. And that's the first mistake. They forget that Jesus is in the boat with them. So they're frantic and they panic to the point of rushing to Jesus and yelling at him, "Don't you care that we are drowning? How can you sleep while we are so desperate and fighting for our lives?" Jesus wakes up from his calm sleep, and he gets up and he talks to the wind, and he talks to the sea, and the winds and the sea obey him, and the storm disappears. The story actually told us that there were many little ships around them, but they didn't have Jesus in them. Only this boat had Jesus. And yet the disciples forgot that Jesus was in the boat. I remember when I was a kid, there used to be a song we sang in church. "With Jesus in the vessel, I can smile at the storm." I guess the disciples forgot about the song. And Jesus turns to the disciples and says, "Why are you so afraid?" I like the fact that Jesus first calms the storm, and then he teaches a practical lesson to the disciples. Jesus is really telling them, "Why did you forget that I am here?" And the disciples are astonished how the storm, how the sea and the wind obey Jesus. And you know what they said? They said, "What kind of a man is he that even the sea and the wind obey him?" You see, nature knows who Jesus is, but the human heart has a hard time believing and accepting who Jesus is. Yes, some say he's a good prophet. Yes, he's a teacher. Yes, he's a good philosopher. Yes, he was a rebel of his time. But the Bible actually tells us that Jesus is God. What manner of a man is he? He's God. That's why nature obeys him. I also found interesting the fact that Jesus brings the storm to an end, but it's not only the disciples in the boat that benefit from it, because there were other little ships around them. Everybody benefits when Jesus blesses his people. Or in other words, we can say, when I am blessed, the blessing that I receive from God, I should use it to bless others, those around me. So the question comes back to you. Why are you afraid? Why are you so anxious? Why are you so fearful? Jesus comes back to you when he comes back to me to remind us that he is God. I love the verse from the Bible that says, where Jesus says, all power is given unto me in heaven and on earth. All power. There is nothing that will not obey or submit to the voice of Christ, except, of course, the human heart. But I pray that you and I will submit to the voice of God. Then there was a story of a demon-possessed man. He was possessed with so many devils that the poor man would hurt himself. He would cut himself. And he could not live among other human beings. He actually lived in the tombs. Everybody was afraid of him. He had no human friends. But Jesus comes by, and this poor man, in the depths of his heart where no one can hear but God, he yearns for deliverance. He wants a new start. This man possessed by demons rushes to Christ, foaming from his mouth in anger and rage. The devils speak out and, what have you against us? And Jesus commands the demon to go out of the man. And the demon says, can you allow us to go and take possession of the pigs that were nearby? And Jesus allows them to flee to the pigs. And there were about 2,000 pigs. This man was totally possessed. He had no self-control. He had no saying in his life because the devil took total control of his life. Once delivered, the man sits by the feet of Jesus with his mind restored, his life transformed. And he begs Jesus, allow me to go with you. I want to follow you. But it's very interesting what Jesus says. Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, go back to your friends. Go back to your household. Go back to your family and tell them the great things that God has done for you and how God had compassion on you. I found this interesting because usually Jesus is asking people, you come follow me. You come follow me. You come follow me. But this man that's volunteering to follow him, Jesus says, no, you're going to stay here. Go back to your household. Go back to your village. Go back to your town, to your people, and tell them what Jesus has done for you. You know what I found interesting? This is the first missionary that is sent to preach the word of God. The story of the demon possessed was found in Mark chapter 5, 1 to 20. And then we went to verses 21 to 24. And this is another beautiful story of the power of Jesus Christ. A ruler of the synagogue, his name was Jairus. He had a little girl that was dying. Jairus goes to Jesus and says, please come home with me and heal my daughter because she's about to die. And Jesus accepts. He starts walking with the man. But as they're walking, suddenly Jesus stops and says, who touched me? And the disciples looked at each other and Peter says, what do you mean who touched you? There's a multitude around you. There's tons of people that are touching you. But Jesus says, no, someone touched me because I felt power coming out of me. You know what's amazing about this story? That there is a difference between the touch of faith and just a common touch. And Jesus can tell the difference. he knew that there was someone among the multitude that touched him with faith. And everybody stops. And suddenly, this poor lady comes out and says, I touched you. I touched you because I was sick. You see, I have been sick for 12 years, and no doctor could help me. I spent all my fortune on doctors, and no one could heal me. And then I heard you were coming, and I've heard what you've done to others. And I knew that if I could only touch the hem of your coat, you would heal me from my disease. And everybody was astonished. And Jesus said, your faith has saved you. Go, my daughter. Go and enjoy your health. The touch of faith is very different than a common touch. And Jesus can tell who comes to him in faith. I pray, my friend, that you and I, when we approach Jesus, we will approach him believing that he is God, that he has all power in heaven and on earth, and that he can help us. But as they're walking towards Jairus' house, now a servant appears and says, don't bother the master, your daughter is dead. Although Jairus heard how the touch of faith healed this lady, Jairus still had no faith in Jesus Christ. And Jairus is about to give up because the servant told him that his daughter was dead. And I love how Jesus doesn't give up on us, doesn't give up on our lack of faith. Jesus tells Jairus, be not afraid, only believe. You know, Jesus is telling Jairus, Jairus, believe that I can help you. Believe like the woman that touched the hem of my garment and was healed. Believe, Jairus, because to him who believes, all things are possible. And Jesus goes to Jairus' house. The little girl is dead, but Jesus wakes her up and returns the little girl to the parents. What an amazing stories we read. The touch of faith. And if we can only believe, God can actually help us. I was blessed by the stories of this week's lesson. And I pray that you are blessed also. Take the time to read them for yourself. Think about them. Meditate on them. There is a blessing when we open the Word of God. It brings blessing to our lives. It renews our mind. It transforms our lives. Our mindset is changed. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.